Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Rob Kirby. He is from Kirby Analytics, and I'm very happy to have him back on the X22 Report Spotlight. Rob, welcome to the Spotlight.
Pleasure to be with you again, Dave.
Thank you for coming on, and we are seeing a lot of things happen around the world. And I wanted to start off with the Brexit. And we know it's an advisory referendum. Actually, nothing really happened yet. The Parliament in the UK, they haven't voted yet. They haven't enacted Article 50. The EU and the nations that make up the EU haven't really done anything. But we see the corporate media, we see governments, we see the central banks out there continually talking about the Brexit, how it's going to bring down the economy, how things are going to implode. Well, things were imploding anyhow. This has nothing to do with that. That's what I've been looking at and seeing. What I want to know from you is, where do we go from here? I mean, is this Brexit going to really happen? Is the UK going to leave the EU?
My view, Dave, is that it's almost irrelevant at this point whether the UK actually leaves the European Union, but I do think they will. But the big thing that stands out, at least in my mind, and the relevance of this vote to leave, it's more that it was a rebuke of the globalist movement forward. And when I say the globalist movement forward, what I'm specifically talking about is the rush towards one world government, one world currency, one world religion, which is the mantra of the globalist clique, the uber elites who seemingly have been shepherding or guiding world affairs for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And this seems to me to mirror the movement that's going on in America, that's being manifested with the populist support of Donald Trump. That's another pot on the stove of bubbling nationalism rearing its head. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to this Brexit vote than what might first meet the eye, because it encapsulates the rejection of the globalist creed.
Now, we hear from the central bankers, the EU, where they're saying, well, because of what's happening with the UK and their referendum, we're going to make the EU even stronger. We're going to go into Africa, try to get some of those nations to join up with the EU. We're going to make this into like an EU empire. Do you see this happening?
There have been other great thinkers in the history of humanity who had similar visions of basically taking over the world. A couple of names that come to mind are Adolf Hitler, Napoleon Bonaparte. Anyway, these stories don't ever tend to end well for the people with such grandiose visions. And I suspect that this mal-concocted notion of taking over the world for the good of mankind will have a similar ending.
Do you think other countries at this point are going to vote out of the EU? I mean, we hear a lot of calls from other countries saying they'd like to have a referendum. Do you see this happening?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a list of at least 8 countries already that are talking much along that line, and I really feel that this Brexit vote is a really big spanner in the gears of the march towards the one world government. I just don't think its relevance or its importance can be understated.
I wanted to move on to gold right now. And since December, I mean, gold was back, 1,050 or so back in December of 2015. And we've been seeing gold surge since that time. What is your take on why gold is all of a sudden just moving up right now?
Well, it's a combination of fiat money is failing before our eyes. We've got 12 or 13 trillion dollars worth of sovereign debt in the world currently trading in negative interest rates. And this is all because, Dave, the fiat money is doing exactly what it's designed to do, which is fail. Every fiat currency that's ever been introduced on the planet has failed. Our current fiat regime will fail. And we're seeing evidence that it is failing in front of our eyes. And the only thing that's kept gold from surging much higher has been a hallucinating application of paper contracts in the form of futures that have been sold on recognized exchanges to keep the price from absolutely riveting higher. But to wit, the price of metals will rivet higher, and it's only a matter of time, because the amount of paper selling that's been occurring on the paper exchanges for metal have been, let's just say, eye-watering, and very soon these exchanges will lose credibility as a proxy for or for any kind of legitimate price discovery, because the amount of paper contracts that are being sold, as represented by the rise in open interest, is making a mockery of the notion that these are fair or free markets, period.
Now, you mentioned paper contracts, but I've been noticing starting in December that it seems like it's getting harder and harder for the central banks, governments, to throw these paper contracts at the gold market to bring it down. And each time they do it, we're seeing the market come down a little bit, but then it surges much higher after that. Do you think they're losing control of the precious metal market?
Oh, absolutely they are. And the reason they're beginning to, we're seeing signs of them losing control, Dave, is because they're losing credibility. Because when you throw that many paper contracts, at the precious metals price, people start to ask questions, and the other thing that's occurring is that people are starting to understand that when they hold paper contracts, they don't really own anything that's tangible. And so what we're seeing in response to this massive rise in open interest, bigger players are beginning to, and increasingly are demanding, the real thing, as in physical bullion. And it's the war of the demands for physical bullion versus the supply of paper. That's the real war that's being waged. And ultimately, the demand for physical bullion will trump the paper price, because for all the paper that the officialdom throws at the metals, they still have to expel some physical to basically to make their lies, or make their surreptitious interventions, to make them credible. They have to expel some physical precious metal into the marketplace to back up their paper, basically their paper shenanigans. And at some point, the cupboard will be bare, and they won't have the small amounts of physical that are required to back up their false claims being made through the paper markets. And once the cupboard's bare, then it will not be a grind higher. It'll be like a dam bursting, and prices will rocket higher.
So as gold continually trends upward, what happens to the dollar?
Ultimately, the dollar will be toast. But for the time being, gold and the dollar have been rising together, because there's still a lot of people in the world who believe that the dollar possesses safe haven qualities. Ultimately, faith in the dollar will end up having been a fool's errand, and people will realize that holding dollars is not like holding gold or precious metal at all.
Now, we've been seeing China and Russia, they've been duplicating the SWIFT payment system, exchanges. Do you think Russia and China, do you think they're ready to take over the monetary system because the dollar is dying and the U.S. monetary system is heading in a downward trend, heading into the abyss. Do you think they have the ability to take over the monetary system? Do you think they're going to take over the monetary system?
I think it's inevitable that a Chinese-led initiative will displace the dollar as the world's reserve currency. I feel that it's coming. The timing of exactly when it occurs, good thing to guess or to ponder. But my feeling is that it can't be too far away. It may be a matter of weeks. It may be a matter of months. I don't think it's a matter of years anymore.
So as things move from west to east, what do you think the Fed, the U.S. government, the EU, what is their plan?
Well, I certainly hope it isn't a nuclear war.
Well, we don't hope that.
but increasingly, it looks like they might actually be thinking that that is a viable option.
So you think their solution for China and Russia taking over the system is to start war?
Generally speaking, that's exactly what history would suggest is in the offing.
So, I mean, if we look around the world, we do see a lot of provocations throughout the South China Sea. We see it in the Middle East. We see it with Russia and Eastern Europe. So we do see a push for war. Do you think that they're going to try to start war before the collapse, or do you think the collapse will occur and then they'll start war?
Well, I think that if we get a major war, a lot of this is going to be moot. And I mean, typically, this is what occurs when economies fail, when currencies fail. The powers that be start a big war. They'll either blame the collapse on the war, or the war will be the reason for the collapse. And I mean, at that point, I think really debating, it's like a chicken and an egg argument, which came first. Once you're in a bloody big war, I don't think it really, how it started, it becomes quite immaterial. The carnage is what counts.
Yeah,
unfortunately, Dave.
Yeah, that's true. Rob, are you saying that the central banks right now, they have no other tricks up their sleeves? Do you think they'll try maybe QE4 or something like this just to try to keep the economy running?
Well, I mean, QE4, I've lost track of the QE.
Yeah, I know.
Because, like, in my view, Dave, we've been in QE now since 2007, and we had QE, and it's really never stopped. I view it a little bit really kind of like a relay race where the baton gets passed from one lackey to the next lackey, because it started off with American intervention in terms of QE, and then the baton, it seems, was passed maybe to the European Central Bank, and Japan's had their turn running with the baton for a while. But the one thing that's been constant since 2007, somebody's been running with the baton, printing money like it's going out of style, and this has not stopped. And all these central banks, they're all linked through mutual swap arrangements. So I mean, as long as one of them's printing, or whether one or two or three of them are all printing together, the common element here, Dave, is that there's printing occurring.